Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing, here today on Conscious Business Zone with Alexia Parks. Hi, Alexia. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Kathy?
Great, great. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so interested in what you're doing and want everyone to know about it. So I want to read a little bit about her bio before we get started so that you can have an idea that it's not often that I have people on. Well, every once in a while I have people on that are quoted in Wikipedia, but which is like super cool. So anyway, Alexia Parks, she's the 10 Traits founder, CEO and speaker, inventor, award-winning entrepreneur, and United Nations mentor. As a United Nations mentor, she mentored the young leader who became the #1 Goldman Sachs Fortune Most Powerful Woman in the World Award winner in 2014. I have a lot in common with you with United Nations work. Alexia Park is also the inventor of the patent-pending Alexia Park Gender Equality Scale and Power Tools, used with this #1 award winner, that form the basis of 10 Traits Rapid Training System. So I'm not going to, you've written so many books. You were named one of Newsweek's 50 who matter most on the net. So, I mean, you really have your bio. I could keep going, but I'd rather just ask you. So your journey to find these 10 traits and the gender equality, what was the reason that you felt this was so important?
Well, that's a very good starting question. I can say I've spent a lifetime searching for what I would say answers to some of the world's biggest challenges. Like, how do we solve these big challenges? So, in a sense, by making that my driving cause, how to search for basically continuously logging your highest thoughts as you proceed. I began as a writer, and I was always trying to uplift my own consciousness by journaling, by writing. I wrote for the national desk of the Washington Post and so on, and was always trying to find that higher level. So I went through life, and you could say I was never really able to be hired in the way that people normally go into a job and get a paycheck, because I had to follow my own consciousness. I had to follow my own purpose as I saw it. And everything that happened, starting even as early as 1979, when I got a 10-day invitation to attend this place where mindfulness was being taught.
Oh, wow.
They even had meditation, in the strictest form, massage, all this higher consciousness that was coming through Esalen, that was coming through all these different mind control techniques. But I got a 10-day because I was writing for the Washington Post, and people were interested in my opinion coming out of a world that had a lot of science-based in it too. So I had a grounding in science, but I looked at it through the lens of consciousness. And so I over my career, I've launched 5 businesses and launched 2 nonprofits. And part of that is because I didn't want to fit into anybody else's understanding of what work should be. I wanted work to be full of meaning, full of purpose. And if I couldn't find employment in that area, I created it.
Right. Well, you are a trailblazer for sure. So the 10 traits work, I want to keep going to it because I'm so curious about it.
Sure.
I, like you, have been self-employed most of my life and have created. I can't help it. It's almost like we're constant change agents. We just
it's
have
being mindful and being aware, and then adjusting and adapting. People are beginning to understand how important that is. So let me talk about the 10 traits, and
Yes.
also people. I will give them for those who join in today and ask, because you'll have them showing up on your comment feed. We will send those people a free link so they can actually rate their own traits, rate the traits of others. They can look at what I say is it's a 1-minute assessment tool, and there's a patent pending on it, but we are going to be making it free. But they will be early adopters and being able to try it out and tell us what they think of it, because it's a 1-minute assessment. It actually puts you into a whole brain state. And so it's, I say it's like a walk in nature. And I'll share the 10 traits in a minute. But when you take a walk in nature, Kathy, or any of your uh, people who are following today, it's you're walking on a trail, and especially here in Boulder where I live, you walk on a trail in nature. Your left brain, your logical brain, is focused on keeping you standing upright. So you don't want to trip, you don't want to fall, and it's watching the trail. It's moving you forward. And your right brain, your holistic right brain, is looking at the environment, it's looking at the clouds, it's looking at the trees, it's looking at who might be approaching or ahead of you on the trail or coming from another direction. Those are kind of survival strategies, keeping you standing upright and keeping you in your environment. When those two are simultaneously engaged, what happens is it locks in your limbic system and you enter a flow state. So with the 10 traits, I take 10 powerful, I'm going to use this word once and I'll take it away. I use 10 powerful masculine traits and I pair them with 10 equally powerful, complementary, opposite feminine traits. And when you put them into a dynamic synergy inside yourself, or within relationships, or within teams, as in leadership and leading teams, you unlock and maximize all this untapped potential that I say has been polarized and suppressed in both men and women and people beyond the labels for millennia. This is something where even Jared Polis, running for governor of the state of Colorado, so if Jared's watching, hi Jared, he's been a friend for many years. When I was on the internet, named one of 50 people who matter most on the internet, I did an electronic democracy site. So I met Jared way back in 1995. So if he's watching, hello, Jared. But he was running his campaign, and I had a Kickstarter campaign, and I originally had these 10 pair of traits that you can put into this dynamic synergy inside yourself or within relationships. I had it just on a paper. It was laminated, and people could mark on it, and I would hand it to people I was mentoring or coaching and executive coaching, and say, where are you? Where is the other person? And they would mark it with a marking pen, and then it could be erased. He came in as a funder that was prior to his election and helped support my Kickstarter campaign. And for his early adopter at that stage 2 years ago, he got big laminated posters that were still in that print form, but it funded the digital campaign, which created the platform 10 Traits, where I am today. But that is traits such as, if you take one trait pair, it might be someone is a risk taker, like Elon Musk, wants to continuously fly off into space or do, extreme leading edge ideas that are disruptive ideas. And you have the person who wants to avoid a risk. So where are you, Kathy, in between the extreme risk taking and the person who avoids risk? So if I were
a risk taker,
but how extreme?
I would say pretty extreme. I just started doing this, just decided to do it, and started doing this without thinking about the consequences. I just
That's it's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I had my daughter, for example, who loves to travel, would call herself a big risk taker because she will just, sometimes when she's traveling on her own without family, she will show up at an airport and say, what flight is leaving next and where's it going? I want to buy a ticket on it. Wow. That's a risk taker, because she's willing to say, I've got something on my back, I've got a lightweight carry-on, and I'm free for the next 3 or 5 days or week. Where's the next plane going?
Wow.
I actually tried it when I was in Thailand, and I ended up taking I tried that and flew into Cambodia. So I had like 2 weeks in Cambodia just because I tried that same philosophy of just, you show up at the airport if you happen to be traveling, and I was at that time, maybe 10 years ago. Where's the next plane leaving? And you just trust that it's going to take you to a place you really want to go and meet people you need to meet. That's one. My son is also a rock climber. That's another extreme. Other traits might include someone like here, we're having a conversation. Some of your people, in fact, they may write in and say, I'm in a relationship where I love conversations like this. I love listening. I'm here on Facebook because I love listening to you, Kathy, and with Alexia and the conversation. But I'm in a relationship, and that person doesn't talk very much. Well, when you rate yourself and you rate your traits, and that's a trait pair, being highly expressive and being less expressive, you rate yourself and you rate the other person and you look where the gaps are. And where those gaps are, we say throw in conversations. Well, if you're a coach or you're a mentor or you're an advisor to someone trying to support them in building a relationship together, making it stronger, you might say, well, why don't you ask them? Every time I say something like this, you become a little more silent. You don't engage with me, and I feel like I would love to go a little deeper. What can I say, or how can I engage with you? That's another set of trait pairs. And I'll just mention one more, because I was at a Starbucks a year ago when we were testing the online 1-minute tool, and it's coming out of beta now, and it's exciting in the year. Anybody who signs up will get that opportunity to have a free early adopter test online. We've heard of fight or flight. We think of that as a human trait, and it's evolved out of all of these traits. In fact, the 10 traits, this whole higher consciousness tool to help us get smarter, faster. I say get smarter, faster together. It's a higher consciousness tool because it will take our belief system about fight or flight and that we might be fighters or so on. Well, it also is in our system is paired with the diplomat. So I was at a Starbucks in California, in Santa Barbara, and I asked a woman if she wanted to take it. She had 1 minute in between customers, and I gave her the mobile phone, and she went on, and she was able to take it. When she got to the 10th trait, which is fight or flight, and versus the diplomat, the two complementary pairs, she had said that her, in this case, the boyfriend, it could be anybody, any gender is not specific. Her boyfriend, in this case, was really a fighter, but she was the diplomat. And they were at such extremes that I said, you really need to decide if this is the relationship you want. If he is always triggered and he goes, his mode is to go to fighting, and your mode is to try and befriend and be nice and make things work. It may be, you may spend all of your energy, all your karma, all your consciousness trying to make this relationship work. I think you need to reevaluate whether that's the right relationship for you. Wow. And at that point, the Starbucks coworker nudged her with the elbow and said, "I've told you that. You need to leave that relationship." Now look at your expression. And that's a 1 minute tool because it's based on science. It's based on our evolutionary history. And the other interesting thing about the workplace, because people, 100,000 articles. How many people have read an article today that they want to even share? If they've read an article, they want to share on a link about conflicts in the workplace.
Right.
It turns out in the modern workplace, and this will astound people who are listening today, it's said, and there's science on it and studies done on it, that around the world, $359 billion is spent, is lost by corporations due to conflict in the workplace. And on average, every person spends at least 2.1 hours dealing with a relationship conflict, dealing with a conflict with a friend. Maybe there's gossip in the workplace or the office, and you might feel like you're the target of that. Maybe somebody has moved their chair away, or somebody has made a face that you interpret to be directed at you, and there's conflict. So on average, $359 billion is lost by businesses around the world due to conflict in the workplace. And every employee on average, and some people will spend most of their time trying to deal with a conflict, especially if they're going through a relationship crisis, or a parent with a teen and they're worried about their teen and what involvement they're getting involved in, especially summertime when they're not at school or even after school hours. So those are very disruptive. If you are able to
is that 2 hours a day, Alexia? Or is that 2 hours a day?
No, 2 hours a week. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
1 hours a week, which means that's just sort of the average. Okay. There are people that we know who are work in offices and co-working spaces who are constantly on their phone or on their computer trying to manage a problem at home, maybe with a parent that needs to be have some help because they, are aging and they are caregivers in that sense, or with a relationship where someone they're not certain of the stability of that relationship, or they're coming out of one into a divorce or separating, or or they're just meeting someone and they want to find out, is this person really going to be my type of person? And so there's so much mental activity. And on top of that statistic, the Harvard Business Review, and I think your audience will also be interested in this. Harvard Business Review will say 386 billion, again with a B, um, dollars are spent by corporations. And the title of the article, they can look it up, is called "The Great Training Robbery," because there are so many training programs where they say, come to our program, you can learn how to shed bias, in this 1-day training or 2-hour training. Come to our program, a 2-day program, and you can learn how to be happier in the workplace. Well, they're saying, they call it the Great Training Robbery, and they say $386 billion a year around the world, because people learn that training, they go back with this warm, good, fuzzy feeling of having been trained, but then they soon revert back to their old ways of doing things.
Right.
So by having something on a mobile phone, as simple as a mobile phone, where you can go to 10traits.com, you can log in, you can sign up for rating your traits and rating the traits of someone else. You can immediately, yes, thank you for posting that. They could go there, they could sign up, they can, do it, and they can rate themselves. So if anybody watching this can go to that after this conversation or while we're talking, they can rate their traits, rate the traits of others. They can even ask me questions if they're doing it while they're listening to this conversation.
Okay.
And they can ask it via you online, and I will respond.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I have a question. So I think, is this a self-discovery tool as well? So you go on and you rate yourself, and you can use it as a way to be congruent within yourself first?
Yes. So, for example, let's say you're going into, I'll take the workplace again. You have your phone with you, and you're heading toward a meeting, or you've heard that somebody has been talking behind your back about you. So you go to your tool, you log in, you rate yourself, like, this is who I am, and then you rate that other person. This is who I think they are. Now remember, Kathy, because we're dealing with consciousness here, it's our own consciousness, because we haven't asked them if that's truly who they are.
Right.
So we rate our traits because we believe this is who we are. We rate them because we think that's who they are. Maybe they've been gossiping about us, and it makes us feel frustrated or angry, and we think of labels. They're a gossip, or they're mean-spirited or something. Those are labels.
Right.
When you rate them and you're using traits, you're not using labels like smart, stupid, tall, short, fat, skinny, a gossip, a bully. What you're doing is saying, this person is expressive, and maybe they're expressive at the extreme, and they just don't realize that it's okay not to say everything you're thinking. It's okay to take a pause, and not, you just kind of bite your tongue or hold. In fact, there's a little simple phrase: if you can't say anything nice,
Don't say anything.
Oh, that's a consciousness little.
My father said that every day.
So likewise with yourself, you can even use this with yourself and your future self. Like, I am in this job right here, and I am sitting at the desk job. I'd like to actually be moving around a lot more. Maybe I want more sales. Maybe I want to be in the C-suite, and I want to, meet with people and make a first good impression for our company. Well, you rate yourself, and then you rate your future self the way you think you want to be, and maybe you find that person. Oh, look at your expression again. This is great. I'm getting
this. I do timeline work all the time. So
yes, and so I'm here now, but I see this woman. Now you can take a look at presidential candidates. I think it's fabulous when women run and win the office of president of anything, companies or a country, because there's lots of countries out there women have been presidents.
Yeah.
But seeing women in a state of leadership, we can look at them and we can use them as our future self. If we want to be a musician, we look, at a musician that we want a favor. If we see someone who's like a skydiver, we rate their traits. They would be extreme risk takers, putting their life out in the air, and so on. But a leader in the C-suite or leader manager, you see a person you admire. and then you rate your traits, and you rate their traits, and you just see if what they do is the kind of lifestyle you really want to create stretch goals for. It might take longer hours away from home. It might take travel away from the state that you live in or the community you live in. You have to see, you could even interview them and say, I'd like you to be my mentor for over a coffee for a few minutes. This is what I think you are because I rated your traits this way. Am I correct? Because I think I would love to be trained to be more like you and do the things that you do.
So
You could do that. You could do it with a man. You could do it with a woman. You could do it with anybody across the entire spectrum. And in fact, I think this is what Jared Polis loved is for the committees and campaigns. He shifted the focus away from gender. It's called the Gender Equality Tool, but it's based on where people fit across an entire spectrum. So I take those words and I use them once because they're based on science, and then I throw them away and say, are you a risk taker? Do you avoid risk? Are you more expressive? Do you pull back and you kind of become silent? If you're a nurse in a triage or in an emergency room and somebody comes in on a stretcher, you cannot be expressive. You cannot show on your face any expression of what you might be seeing. You have to stay calm and very neutral. And so people, I call it like situational ethics. You can be extremely engaging, like you are in putting on this a conscious business Facebook site and conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also, if you were like in a situation where you had to just simply be the listener, and listen to someone who's going through some pain or some emotional trauma, and you would have to just do what you're doing. You did acknowledge you're listening, and be as little expression as possible, not to trigger them to think you're acknowledging or agreeing with one point of view or another. So these traits, they basically say, oh, that's the problem. I want to go out and be in community. They want to go work on a tool in the, in the tool shed. They want to create something with their hands, and I want to go out and just engage with people. That's an opposite, but it's not wrong.
I have a question real quick. How do you feel this is different than some of the Myers-Briggs or some of the other personality testings? Because I ran a division at Arthur Andersen with 80 employees, and they had Arthur Andersen. It was called the Change Enablement Group, and this was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. It's what I did before.
You worked there?
Yeah, I was right below partner there. So there was everyone had a budget for training, and there was constantly the opportunity to do the training of the month, subject of the month. And at Arthur Andersen, we didn't use the Myers-Briggs, but at other jobs I did. And people would actually keep their results up on their desks so that when you went to go talk to them, you could say, oh, they're an introvert. I better do it this way. So do you find that this can be used like a tool like Myers-Briggs?
I would say it's the next generation. I call this basically the third wave of the human potential movement.
Oh, wonderful.
And I say that seriously because it's a higher consciousness tool, and it's a higher consciousness because we are continuously evolving. The same, Myers-Briggs is a great tool out there. So is DISC, so is Pathfinder, so is Enneagram. Mm-hmm. But what happens is people tend to go through that, and then they identify with that moment in their life when they were that introvert, which means that someone might treat you then as an introvert and never offer you an opportunity to go beyond that because they rate you as your category. I will go further. In fact, anybody who's listening and responding or leaving a comment, if anybody has taken a Myers-Briggs or a Pathfinder or Enneagram, just make a comment saying yes, type in a comment, because I'll address that if people are responding that way.
Okay. Well, we don't have a lot of responses right now. Zach's on, Zach Bergen, and he says work sometimes gets in the way.
Well, let me just I'll finish that thing about the Myers-Briggs because then I'm going to answer.
Yeah.
So what Myers-Briggs and DISC and Enneagram and others, but I'll just take Myers-Briggs because most people are familiar. Yeah. There's about 80 questions. It takes time to answer that. the prevailing feedback that I get is that most people go through and they're very conscientious about the first 30 questions they're answering. And then it gets almost repetitive or tedious. And so then they just speed through the next 50, just accelerate, because it's like, oh my God, this is too much. I'm going to get, let me just get through it. So the first 30 may at that moment do it. But by the time they finish, then in a sense, it takes time to review it. It takes time to analyze it. And then they kind of get locked in. And I've had people say, oh, I met so-and-so and we're a match because we're both this through the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
I will say that is the past. The next wave, the third wave of the consciousness or the human potential movement is to unlock and untap your full potential. So you use it situationally. You might be like an archer with all these traits in a quiver in your back, and you have a bow, and you pick out the situation that you need, and you say, today I am going to be a risk taker, and I'm going to do this scavenger hunt, and I'm going to go with a team that I do not know anything about. That's going to be scary. And Enneagram would say, but wait a minute, that's not you. You are a service person. You like to stay back and be quiet and so on. It's you choose on the 10 traits. It says we are forever evolving. Every breath, one would say, is a death. Every inhalation is an opportunity to be more mindful in that moment. And the goal is, how mindful can you be in every moment? One of the interesting things I will show it in just a second, because it's I'm going to just show it in front of my face for a moment as a screenshot.
Okay. Okay, great.
It's called 23 Ingredients, because most people who are watching today or listening will be shocked to know that I consider food a spiritual path. And I went on this 23 ingredient path, the number 23 in the word ingredients, mashed together, like 10 traits mashed together. And we wrote a book about it, because I went on only that food, those 23 ingredients, 75% fiber, 15% high fat, and 10% protein. And I was on such a spiritual high for 40 days, because most people do not realize it. They don't even think about it or know it. But we are 10% human. We are 10% human and 90% bacteria. Every cell of our 40 trillion cells in our bodies has mitochondria, which are little energy factories. And our microbiome is, they call it like a 3-pound hairy universe. That's about, 50 trillion our microbiome has a bacteria in there. When you feed them the food that they love, they will return that favor. They're like your 40, 50 trillion employees. They will return that favor by giving you serotonin, which is, we used to think 90%, we used to think most of it came from here. 90% comes from your microbiome, which is in your gut. It's in your lower colon. It's a 3-pound universe that they call the second brain. It's the hottest thing in biology. There's even psycho-neurobiology, which says your food is your mood. And I found that to be a spiritual path, combined with intermittent fasting and so on. So I just mentioned it because we don't think about food being such a big influence on our appetite, but it is. People are anxious, they're under stress, they are irritable, they are aggressive. And one can point to say, what are you eating? Is it food? Is it nutrient dense? Or is it nutrient rich? And is it based on ingredients that cause your microbiome to thrive and your upper body? So it mixes vegan, vegetarian, paleo, and ketogenic, those 4 words, and the best of all of those lifestyles.
Well, I think that's a whole nother show. I think we should do a whole nother show. But I'd like
that they should say, yeah. We'll do it.
Zach asked, have you had the pleasure of knowing or meeting Jill Smith, who was a wonderful exec I worked with at a local company? She exemplified a person who motivates and creates movement, positive change in industry. And he's enjoying the interview. Do you know Jill Smith?
Is she local?
Yes.
Well, we should connect and have a tea, because I think I've done something. I did it maybe 10 years ago when I wrote another book, and I've written 14. But I asked people, how would you finish a sentence? The best boss I ever had was a woman because, and I would ask people in the workplace, and their eyes would open wide and their jaw would like drop on the desk. It's like, what? A woman? The best boss? Because look at you.
Well, why not? I thought we were more compassionate and more empathetic. And
Yes,
we also
exactly.
were more whole home.
But
Looking at everything as a bigger whole.
I totally agree. But think of the time. There was a time when women were asked to wear like little bow ties or string ties. They were asked to wear a suit, and they were asked to come into the office looking more like men than like women. Think of Margaret Thatcher as an example. She had to walk like a man. She had to talk like a man. She had to kind of get into the old boys club like a man. And if she was compassionate and empathetic, they consider those soft skills.
Right.
I will say for Joanne, because the skills found in her brain, and anyone that, is a woman who's feminine and leading with compassion and empathy and collaboration, traits found in the female brain are exactly what's needed. I would say urgently needed, desperately needed in the world today in order to manage the complexities of what we know as a volatile and it's very interconnected world. So what she's doing, everybody who leads the way she does and the way you are doing right now through this program, they need to stand up in as many places as possible. They need to stand up, speak up. We need more women as role models. And the problem is we just haven't had as many women in those C-suites in the Congress, in government, to say, this is how we should lead with compassion. This is how we lead with collaboration. We are empathetic. And our minds can manage higher levels of complexity because we have a bigger corpus callosum. And we are able to
we have more connections from both sides of our brain.
We can manage it much better, which is why there need to be more women in the technology world than they can imagine, enough to make the difference.
Well, Alexia, the reason why I asked about using the 10 traits tool for yourself first is that I feel I've been a business owner since I was 28 years old. I did have to go back to work and work for other people after a divorce, but otherwise I've owned my own business most of my adult life. And I'm not sure how many, I think I have a lot of male traits, more. In fact, I think a lot of us had to take on those traits in order to survive and be successful.
So, do you remember when I said you take 10 powerful masculine and their complementary opposite? It's a synergy. What you're doing is you are dressing in red. You have a scarf around your neck, and you have a necklace. You've got lipstick on. You've got makeup on. You've got nice hairdo. Now, you are dressing in a very feminine style. The background that I can see in your environment there is very, refreshing and feminine and a bright color and heart-centered and consciousness-lifting colors. When you are focused on business, you are in that masculine. That's why I said it's situational. When you have to look at your budget, you go into a linear, logical thing. When you are trying to focus on your next step to like put this program together, you have to go into a big picture. What am I going to call it? What am I going to? So you are in the masculine model. Our best leaders, male and female, are a merge of both. I can look at that. I can look at the candidate, Pete Buttigieg. He is a merge. Jared Polis as a candidate is a merge. Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, Martin Luther King were a merge of the compassionate and the, controlled. When a woman is a successful businesswoman as you are a merge because you know when to do one or the other and you can do both. You are a hybrid human. You are the best.
What comes across is that there's a centering because of the not being off balance. Excuse me. You're able to show up fully present in the now because these two aspects of you are balanced.
Yes, it's situational and it's moment by moment. It's like when you put your key in the car, you're doing it successfully because you've actually studied how to drive a car, you practiced learning how to drive a car, and it becomes neuroplasticity, the neuroplasticity of it is wired in your brain to turn on the key, put your foot on the brake, look before you turn into a street, all that. The same as with running a business. You learn when to be more of what I would say the masculine traits are, the linear, logical, competitive, getting out there to get the job done, taking whatever risks to get it done. But then you pull back and then say, well, maybe we don't have a budget for this. Maybe we ought to be, do this in a collaborative way with others and share the opportunity. That's very feminine. But the people who do it both inside themselves turn out to be great leaders. We have part of our patent is a structured framework where we take Fortune 50 companies like you work for, and you take 16 decision-making categories, and we create a structured framework where people who are listening now will say, we say, rate your traits, send them to the person who's developing the team, and based on the category of people, like based on 5, they will put them into that framework in a balance. And if they need that one particular person, they don't quite have that trait, they might give them training to strengthen it. So a lot of our 10 traits training is to strengthen the traits that people are not a perfect 10. They're not fully strong in one trait or another. And even if they do say, I've had women who say, I'm a perfect 10 and I'm a great collaborator, I'm great, empathetic and compassionate, I'm a great diplomat, and I'm the opposite as well. I say, well, you're in a small pool, or step into a larger arena, because they can be very comfortable at their level, but to challenge them is to throw out an opportunity. And we do that in our training, is to give them leadership challenges based on where they rate themselves. We stretch them, give them opportunities to try something bigger. So you're always growing.
That's what I really can see, that so much of this, the being conscious of what you eat, being conscious of how you're showing up, being conscious about your choices. That's what all of this is about, and going deeper in a way of being in service to the all, not just to yourself. I have one question though, that our mutual friend Sharon Rose sent me an email yesterday. We're working on a project, and her husband interviewed, she sent me a link to a YouTube, and the conversation was with an astrologer, and the conversation was about how much anger there is now in society, and that you see polarization everywhere. I mean, it's so interesting that when you talk about politics, it's like glaring. And so I'm wondering, do you feel that this tool, when you had said that 2 hours a week is spent on disruptive behavior, basically, do you feel that this is a solution because this anger needs to be expressed, at least if it's someone hears it and then it can process, then it can be, that energy is potent energy. It could be used for something productive, right?
Well, this is great, because you're going to have to interview me in about another month, because 10 traits, what you see on 10 traits right now is going through a whole new lift of consciousness itself. And we are going to be having advisors, and we're going to be having a free tool that people will be able to use forever to rate their traits, and then 30-minute advisors who can just give them either free advice or very, very low fee, so that they can just talk through something with someone who's a coach or a mentor. And that will be up there live, and those people who come in who are listening now will see that in about 30 days. We'll have that live testing site, and then we'll do a soft launch, and we'll be at the TechCrunch and South by Southwest and other technology companies, because the conference is in early next spring, because we think the workplace and the work world needs this, because you do need to talk through it. And that's why when we say, when you have gaps, look at the gaps and then fill the gaps with conversations.
Right.
So that's part of our strategy. When you do it by yourself, you can do it internally or through a journal, or you can do it one-on-one with the other person. But we're also going to put in advisors who give people a little higher consciousness, understanding of where those gaps, why they occur and what you can do. The other thing I'll say, it's really interesting. The most popular class at Yale University right now is called, it's a class on happiness. It is in the history of Yale, the most popular.
Wow.
Well, recently Oprah Winfrey gave her staff free access to take that online. It's now on, it was on campus, it's also online. She gave them free access to that class. But here's what happened. 85 of them signed up. 85 of them had the opportunity to sign up. Only 45 did. It was free,
Yeah.
and they could do it online from anywhere they were working. Of that, only 15 people finished that course, and it was free. And of one person who dropped out almost right away, she, of the 45 who originally signed up, she said, I am too unhappy to try and find time to be happy. So so she's like, I can't take time out from being, I'm so stuck in this problem, I can't take time to try and be happy. So my response to her is twofold. One is when you take 1 minute to rate your traits and rate the traits of others, it moves you out of this binary world of saying, he's wrong, I'm right, I'm a victim, they're the villain, he's a bully, she's this or that. And you look at their traits. Oh, that's right, because he just talks too much, or he is always out there trying to like act as if nothing matters. Oh, it's okay, you'll be fine. And he's sort of marginalizing who I am, and she's a woman. You can rate them and say, oh, that's where the conversation needs to come, either my own or through an advisor. The other part of it is that 23 ingredients, that book, because when you think of the food that people are eating, we have 3 projects totaling about a little over $2.5 million. And they are based in 3 areas. We're moving into 3 areas. One is in Colorado, Eagle County, where there are 2 high-end ski areas, Vail and Beaver Creek.
Right.
And then we're also being included one in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and in Indianapolis. Oh. Those are major cities, but they are food deserts, where restaurant food is the norm. In Eagle County, where people come to ski at these high-end resorts, any place, any area where you come to do that kind of exercise or boating or so on, restaurant food is the norm. You go there and they feed you great meals. So there's food poverty because most people eat food. Well, here's another, restaurant food, and a lot of that is pizza, pasta, giant mounds of bread with, with large meals. Very little fiber, the steak and meat and potatoes, and all the things. They do really amazing food as well, but a lot of people kind of go for the pastas and pizzas because they want fast, quick carbs, and they're in a hurry to get back on the slope. So they eat a lot of fast foods and so on. But when you think about that, there's one other shocking statistic, and that is when we think of Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, which are sort of familiar in our area and around the country, right. It turns out that we think a lot of food is purchased there. There goes your whole paycheck. Well, that's not really true, because statistics and studies will show that the diet of many people is to go to a drugstore or a CVS, another shocking look, and the majority of food, manufactured boxed food, is bought in drugstores and CVSs, because people are going to get, look at your face, that reaction. People, and how many people there know this? If you know it, give a thumbs up. If you are shocked, let us know. But they go to get their pharmacy, their prescription drugs.
Rather, they're
go to a store that has, even Walgreens, shelves full of food, and they're hungry, and there's a pizza you can heat up in 10 minutes. There's a heat this and just add water, and there's spray cheese on your burritos and add salsa, and you've got quote a meal. Restaurant food and that fast food based on grains, cereal grains, and soy, rice crops is the norm around the world. 80% of the food of most people, which leads to this idea of anger and rage, because you're not feeding your microbiome the food that it wants. You're feeding manufactured food based on grain, based on 5 cereal grains, based on rice, and there's half million varieties of rice, 500,000 varieties of rice. And that's all extremely vulnerable to climate change, because they are very vulnerable to not only flooding and hurricanes, but they're vulnerable to the opposite, which is drought. So 80% of the world now has its food based on a crop that is highly vulnerable to climate change. Oh, wow. So the 23 ingredients and things like that as I said, vegan, vegetarian, keto, and paleo, but combined so that you're having high fiber and high fat and high protein. Those are the foods of the future. It's not like eating manufactured food. It's eating what your body was designed for. And that will create the happy, feel-good serotonin. So regardless of the anger around you, you will go through it smiling and will say, what's wrong with her? Everybody's mad and she's smiling. Well, it's her
And then make that be contagious.
percent of the deal. You're the command. You're like the captain of the ship. Your ship is basically run by these 50 trillion employees called the microbiome.
Right.
And you want to keep them happy.
Well, it makes total sense because we have three brains. One's in the dantian, which is where you're talking about the gut. One's here in your heart, and then one's in your head. So if all three of them are working well, you are in the flow. Your brain's high functioning and creative.
Your body, my body is not mine. It's not me. It's mine. I control it. This mind is not me. It's mine. I control my mind. Perfect. My food choices are not me. They're mine. That's a Danhok. I studied that years ago, back in the early 2000s. I became an energy healer through that, and I wrote this book. One more little thing called Rapid Evolution. It's a training manual. It's only available online. There's only about 20 copies of it available, but I'm hanging on to them. So I put it online as an online.
I have that book somewhere. I'm sorry I didn't bring it to show it. I think it was. Love that book.
It's such a beautiful cover, and it's a story. But it talks about this concept of love. Now, like Marianne Williamson mentioned it in her talk when she was on the debates. People are mentioning it when they're talking about the shift to love. It is happening. It is. I described it 20 years ago. I actually used climate change as a driver because I said climate change and the higher heat and the events that happen around the weather events are highly stressful. The dry weather, and you see risk to animals and all life on Earth, that's highly stressful.
Right.
However, each one of us has the opportunity to lift our consciousness and guide others just by showing up. And so that rapid evolution was based on the fact that climate change is going to force us to a higher level. It's a watershed. You can see it in our politics today between those who drive you toward fear. That's one side of the watershed. To me, the future that we are heading in, and I'll do it this way. This is fear going backward in time. This is the future, and it's the watershed bringing to love. And I will say, and I put it in the book, that compassion is the gravity. Compassion acts like gravity to bring us together. And that's part of our strategy. So by showing up, by presenting programs like this, by engaging with people, you are creating that gravity around community. And I'm so happy that people are listening.
Oh, I am too. The thing that we have to remember is that there's solutions out there, and that's why I'm so glad that Alexia is here today, is that I want everyone who has a conscious business to know that, of course, there's obstacles. We're humans, we're evolving, we're learning, but that there's tons of fantastic resources for you to use to help you on your journey, so that you can be a powerful leader and you can serve your customers, clients, and employees, internal customers, in a really positive way. So Alexia, thank you so much. We need to wrap up. Is there anything else? I'm going to put your site back up. Is there other better ways to connect with you so that everyone here gets a chance to really connect and learn more?
If they want, they can, we're on Facebook on that. I'm also, they can email me the fast track to my private email, which I'll share publicly, but it's within a closed group here, is my own first and last name, Alexia, Alexia, Parks.com, Parks like mountain parks, @gmail.com. That's a fast track to me.
Okay.
If they have a question related to this. Otherwise, they can go to 10traits.com and they can contact me. And I will say for everybody, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. Because if you think about all the stresses we are going through, any one of us who finds a solution in our own life and shares it is strengthening the whole. Every time we log our highest thoughts, we're sharing them with others. And we can do this now on this site. Thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you for your work. It's so elegant and so resourceful. I really am very proud to know you, and thank you so much for sharing your
Come
information.
on in 30 days and there'll be advisors, the conscious advisors. Anybody interested in being a conscious
Oh,
advisor, send
okay,
me that email to Alexia Parks.
okay,
Email
okay,
or
and I'll put that all in the messaging and comments when as I'm sharing this. So
thanks
thank
so
you
much.
so much.
All right.
Bye. Have a wonderful day.